the employer's incentive is to always pay the least amount for the most value. And so if you don't counter, then you are leaving money on the table.
Today, we'll learn about the salary negotiation process so you can make more money. I mean, isn't that what we all want? Welcome to The Interview, presented by New Horizons. I'm your host, Pat Miller, the Idea Coach. Our guest today is Kolby Goodman. He is a career and job search coach with the Job Huntr in San Diego, California. Kolby, great to see you, friend. How are you today?
I'm doing good, Pat. Thank you so much for having me on here today.
It's my pleasure. I just got to start here. Is it weird that we still have to negotiate salaries in 2022? That just strikes me as weird.
The way that you are looked at as an employee by an employer is as an asset. The same way they would look at a forklift or a warehouse or a new piece of software. They're looking at you for your inputs to present outputs to then profit from. And so the negotiation process is designed to make sure that they're able to get a positive return on investment on you so that you can help them make more money, save time, or reduce risk.
If someone's really good at negotiation, how much more can they earn in a discussion, or how much could they cost themselves if they're not good? Are we talking 2-3%, 10-15%? In your experience, how much money figuratively and literally is on the table if you get good at this?
I would say 20+%. And
that's come on.
Salary. Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. Because ultimately it is your goal as the candidate to showcase your value add, right? It's value propositioning. It's the same reason your next employer, your next manager, they're all consumers, right? They're looking to make purchases to enhance processes, to enhance life, right? And I think this kind of goes to the number one mistake vast majority, if not all, professionals make in the application, interview, and salary negotiation process is that they wait to the end to showcase that value proposition. They think, okay, I have the job offer. Here's the number they've given me. I have them over a barrel, and let me tell them what I expect. But if that number you give, okay, you're going to give me 100, I want 110. If that employer does not believe you can add that value, if you haven't communicated that effectively and directly throughout every interaction, they don't have to give you that 110. A sound employer with good values and a long-term strategy is willing to pay good money for good help. But they're not giving that money away. They're not in the business of giving away profit. But if you can showcase your value add and your direct return on investment, the sky is really the limit.
And I'm sure we'll highlight a few different mistakes that people make, but I want to stay on this one just for a second, because you talked about weaving your value in, or maybe your expectations in, throughout the process. Can you give us some examples on what you mean by that?
So the universal language, no matter what native tongue you speak or ultimately in business, is numbers, right? Metrics and numbers drive everything. And so the four buckets that any business is looking to contribute to, or needles to move whenever they engage and invest in an asset, employees included, is how can this asset make me more money? How can this asset save me money? How can this asset save me time? And how does this asset reduce my risk? You cannot simply just be qualified. You cannot be an average candidate and expect above average salary.
That's a terrific point. What are some other things that people do incorrectly when they're negotiating, common mistakes?
I think ultimately is not being educated on what's expected, right? So a good employer doesn't simply just want a cog in the machine, right? They want a critical thinker, and ultimately they want a problem solver. And so if you're not iterating your ability to solve problems and solve the right and important problems for that employer, you're going to be at a much bigger disadvantage. So ultimately it's about how are you resolving the right pain points, right? Again, going back to our consumer mindset, we tend to make purchasing decisions based on things that will relieve pain versus enhance joy. And so if you can speak to and understand what are the major pain points of not only the company or the department or the team, but the individuals within that team, right? A killer question I coach my clients on asking at the end of any interview is, how can the next person in this role make your life easier?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it ultimately sets you up to say, hey, I'm here to help.
When we get to the point of negotiation, do employers expect us to make a counter to their initial job offer?
Absolutely. Right? Again, they're you're being looked at as an asset, right? So your job is to negotiate. Um, the employer's incentive is to always pay the least amount for the most value.
Hmm.
And so if you don't counter, then you are leaving money on the table. But again, just because you put a number out there and say, well, I want X plus 5, X plus 10, X plus 20, doesn't mean they have to give it to you. You have to justify that. And if you wait to the very end to that replying to the offer letter email to make that justification, it's already too late.
What do you make of the employer that says, well, we're not going to negotiate, or they're all acting offended if you try and counter offer? I'm sure you've seen that 1,000 times. Is more often than not, is that just an act to try and shut you down?
I think ultimately it is. I I like when employers do that mainly because it is a peek behind the curtain of what somebody is like once the honeymoon period is over,
Oh, yes, that's true.
right? Like if you don't understand my value, if you don't believe in it, if you're not willing to make the investment, that's not going to change once I'm on board. And so being able to get that understanding in the forefront before you've made that really important long-term mutual commitment, I think that's a godsend, right? Because I'd rather have you learn that lesson before you sign a dotted line and alter your life in some way to take this new job than get in there and within weeks or even months realize I've made a huge mistake. This is not the right place for me. This is not the right culture for me.
If we get to the end of the road on money, we think we've gotten the most money we could possibly get, but we're still not satisfied. What else is up for negotiation? Maybe some things that we don't think of naturally.
hmm So, equity or profit sharing, depending on the size of the company and where they're at. Obviously, stock options for larger publicly traded companies. Other things that are important are things like stipends, right? So whether it's childcare stipend, whether it's healthcare stipend, um, things that are required for you to spend money on to do your job. And then lastly, and the big thing that's come into play, um, both going out of the office and coming back in the last 2 years since COVID-19, is remote work, right? And I think that is something that a lot of my clients are coming to me now as knock on wood, the pandemic is becoming a little bit more controllable. The health risks have been mitigated through practice in medicine and all that. But with that, employers say, okay, cool. Your time at home is over. Come back to the office. And people are realizing that they don't need that structure anymore. They also don't need to spend hours in the car every day. They don't need to have to get up early and have a hard clock in. Like all these things that we kind of got used to, we kind of got numb to pre-pandemic, and that we realized post-pandemic actually is a life enhancer. And so those things, I had a client just a couple weeks ago who was, trying to figure, okay, I really want this job, but the commute is anywhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours every day round trip. I said, okay, like if you're willing to make that sacrifice, if that opportunity is worth the time investment in the car, that's totally fine. But let's make sure you get compensated. And we did the math, right? You're going to spend 10 hours a week in the car, 40 hours a month in the car. That's an extra full week of work every month. That's 3 months of work a year in the car, right? So be compensated for that. Like if you're going to want me to come in, I want to make sure that I'm compensated for either, I want a company car, I want a gas stipend, I want to be paid more in salary to make up for the time I'm really spending in the car, or I want a 6 month trial in the office that I want an option to then if I hit all of these metrics, then I can return back home full time.
If we get an offer from someone else and we're being recruited away, should we show our current offer to our employer and ask them to match, or should we just take the offer and go?
It's a great question. It's something I deal with on a regular basis with a lot of my clients who I've worked with for years. And what I have seen more often than not is within 6 to 12 months after an offer that has been matched, that person leaves anyways,
Hmm.
right? right? And it's something I've experienced myself in my first job, in both, multiple jobs. When I switched, it was, hey, I'm putting in my 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden everybody white knuckles it and says, why, you can't leave us, like, what can we do to keep you? And my thing is like, what, you could have made this practice of trying to keep me a habit. You can, but ultimately it's not going to change the way that you're perceived. It's not going to change the way that the culture has been, that has allowed you to even contemplate taking this other offer.
That's a great point of view. I appreciate it. And the conversation's been great. I want to make sure that everyone knows how you help people with Job Huntr. So tell us about the company, and who do you help and how do you help?
Yeah. So my consultancy helps individuals looking for better jobs, looking for a career that fits into their lives, and not vice versa.
Sounds like a great service. Kolby Goodman, career and job search coach with the Job Huntr in San Diego. Thank you so much for coming on today, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. That's my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Hey, it's Pat Miller, the Idea Coach, here from the Interview Podcast. If you enjoyed this information and you want to watch more of the podcast or some other helpful videos like resume tips, interview best practices, and more career training info, you can get it on our website. Check out the website at careerdevelopmentsolutions.com/webinars. One more time, that's careerdevelopmentsolutions.com/webinars. See you there.